Hello, and welcome to today's KraneShares webinar, the $5 trillion humanoid robot opportunity, capitalizing on the boom with KOID. My name is Brendan Ahern. I'm the Chief Investment Officer of KraneShares. We're very excited today to be bringing what we've seen occurring in Asia. In a recent trip to Tokyo, I experienced robots in both Narita and Haneda, the two big airports in Tokyo, where they had these wheelchair robots would just drive around autonomously. And you could just hop into one and it would take you to your gate. A few months ago, I had dinner with Alibaba in Hong Kong. There were dummy waiters, little R2-D2-like robots, where the waiter would take your dirty plate and put it into the robot and it would scoot off into the kitchen. In Chinese hotels, it's becoming commonplace that when you order room service, you would hear a knock on the door. When you open the door, you'd look up, but there was nothing there. You'd look down, and there is a little robot that has your meal inside of it. I think what we've seen and experienced in Asia is something that we're on the precipice of the adoption of humanoid robotics, driven by the convergence of industrialized manufacturing with artificial intelligence. We really believe that the convergence of these two trends provides a tremendous opportunity for investors. As well as this investment opportunity, it's going to have a whole host of winners. And yes, there is risk that there might be potential losers, but we want to capture the entire humanoid robotic ecosystem as well as this convergence with artificial intelligence. To help me bring this journey, bring this story to you is my colleague, Derek Yan, a senior investment strategist and one of the key insights and players in bringing KOID, our NASDAQ-listed ETF, to investors. So Derek's going to provide us an overview of KOID, the ETF, and go over the investment opportunity landscape. Derek and I have the distinct pleasure to be joining you today with our new friend, Teddy Haggerty of RoboStore. RoboStore.com, the official partner of Unitree, a major Asian robotics company, actually sells humanoid robots to corporations, universities, and a whole host of other players here in the United States. So Teddy has very generously given us the opportunity to visit him in his factory here in the outside of New York. We're going to have an actual live demonstration from one of Teddy's robots that, again, are completely accessible to potential buyers via RoboStore.com. For those of you joining us today and in need of SEMA or CE credits, please email CE, that's Charlie Edward, @KraneShares.com. During the course of today's webinar, please don't hesitate to reach out with potential questions at info@KraneShares.com. Just really quickly, for those of you not familiar with KraneShares, our founder, Jonathan Crane, moved to China in the early 2000s. Living and building a business in China, Jonathan saw how new China economic sectors were driving the growth of China's GDP. Secondarily, Jonathan experienced how the opening of China, both its economy and capital markets, was having a material effect on indices as well as passive investment vehicles like index funds and ETFs that were making those indices investable. And moving back to the United States at the end of the decade, Jonathan was surprised that neither of these two trends were incorporated in neither indices nor ETFs. That is the rise of these new economic sectors, nor the opening of China's capital markets to foreign investors. That was Jonathan's thesis in starting KraneShares beginning back in 2013. Fast forwarding to today, we manage approximately $10 billion of investments on behalf of our investors. We're known for really our China-focused, our suite of exchange-traded funds focused on these new China thematics. At the same time, we've taken things we've seen in China and parlayed that into global as well as emerging markets. So things like we did cars, the first global electric vehicle ETF, We are known for KWEB, but we also have KEMQ, our EM-focused ETF that takes these growth sectors in China and apply that to broader emerging markets. We also are very much known for our move into carbon credit allowance futures. Our colleague Luke Oliver, certainly the expert in that space. And then we've listed ETFs on behalf of partners such as most recently Man Group, Hedgeye Risk Management, as well as Quadratic Capital and Mount Lucas. Joining us today, again, I mentioned Teddy Haggerty, the founder and chief executive officer of RoboStore. We have a whole host of great questions to talk to one of the preeminent experts in this space. And again, Teddy has very generously agreed to give us a live demonstration. We're here live without a net. But I'm going to hand things off to Derek to provide an overview of the investment landscape and why we're so excited about our KOID ETF.
Thank you, Brendan. Thank you, everyone, for joining today's webinar. So I'm going to give you an overview of KraneShares Global Humanoid and Embodied Intelligence Index ETF, ticker KOID, KOID. So KOID actually emerging investment opportunity in the world today that is humanoid. Compared to many, I think, legacy robotic ETF, humanoid represent like a whole different set of investment opportunities. I think in terms like the traditional robotics really focus on the kind of like industrial robotic arms or traditional automation, which has been happening in the world for over, I would say, a decade now. But that investment has been really slowing down as the old factories really, they all have a certain degree of automation and kind of like a robotics. But when it comes to, when you see a lot of factories, especially in the United States, it is still very labor intensive. You still need human to move components, check connectors, doing things like, so we have seen like labor shortage, not only in the United States, but across the world, in Japan, Germany, China. So that is something I think a big problem for the economy going forward. So humanoid is actually the solution. I think all the investors and big tech companies like Tesla, NVIDIA, even like Amazon is now committed to use humanoid in their warehouses. That's kind of like a solution to really solve the last mile of automation across the warehouses, factories, nursing home, and many places, many industries. So this is definitely like probably the most exciting opportunity, with Morgan Stanley projecting 1 billion unit of humanoid and up to 5 trillion total addressable market by 2050. That's a big market with rising demand for humanoid manufacturing across the world. So with that, we developed the KOID with our index provider Mercury to have a full spectrum of the ecosystem in the index to really capture all kinds of opportunities, from the brain, the intelligence, to the body, all the components, and also the integrators who assembling and commercialize on humanoid. So if you look at the latest models of humanoid, you'll probably be shocking, right? Like we're gonna do a live demo of the Unitree's latest models, and also there being like, I think, videos of many humanoid robotics out there. Their performance and their capability is just like shocking. We have seen like the AI is really breaking through to really empower the intelligence of humanoid to be a general purpose. Humanoid robotics can do many things that potentially reshape the landscape of warehousing in and factories in many ways. And we're going to see this opportunity to really solve the problem for labor shortage and aging population. So I think one thing people didn't realize is that the robotics, the humanoid robotics opportunity actually is really benefiting from the advancement in the artificial intelligence. You probably hear the CEO of NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, his keynote at the GTC conference is really showing you that the humanoid robotic can actually be a bigger opportunity after AI, and probably is going to create a tremendous demand for AI going forward. Why is that? Because if you think about like traditional robotics, like probably you see some demos early time with Boston Dynamic. I think that's a lot of engineering problem and programming. But now I think AI and large language model is actually playing a role to training the latest model of humanoid. I think a lot of people call that like vision language action model. Is actually bring action, say like grab a water. That action alone is like complicated, but if you bring that action data, those signals into a digital world, put into Omniverse, and allowed all kinds of data on the website, on the internet, and also the real life or physical world together to be trained on that Omniverse a million times or trillion times, you're gonna have a very smooth action of grab the water. That intelligence is coming, is getting better and better. So that's why a lot of investors today are very excited about the humanoid intelligence. Like when it comes to AI, a lot of people think about like, oh, there's a GPT moment, right? We think the GPT moment for humanoid actually is coming. So how do we gonna use that intelligence? We think there's tremendous demand in the factories, in hospitals, nursing homes, and our home, like doing choices. So there's labor shortage everywhere, right? So the use cases is like basically anywhere. It's like Morgan Stanley projected the 5 trillion total addressable market for humanoid. I think Elon Musk probably have a more aggressive projection on that number. With the demand is with aging population, not only in the United States, but like Europe and Asia, the labor shortage is everywhere. So how do we really capture this opportunity with the investment? We think the value chain think about the value chain of humanoid. You need like intelligence, you need a brain, you need like a lot of semiconductors providing the analog signal. You need a lot of like NVIDIA's providing this platform to training the humanoid model. And there's integrators who put everything together to really commercialize it. But we think at this stage, this is quite early stage. A lot of investment opportunity actually coming from the body, the components. If you think about the cost of making a humanoid, it's actually very expensive at this stage. It requires a lot of actuators, and within the actuators, there's harmonic reducers, bearings, encoders, screws. So those are a global like opportunity, right? So if you think about the leaders in a lot of the supply chains is actually across Japan, China, and German. So like if you need like 1 billion unit of humanoid at some point, you need vast amount of investment into the supply chain to really power the capacity to make the humanoid affordable. So that's why we think a lot of suppliers within the United States, all the manufacturing and companies who already partner with the humanoid company, and also in China, in Japan, a lot of component company providing the harmonic reducers and the bearings, those encoders is actually very critical when it comes to the captured investment opportunity of humanoid. So that's why we create this index together with our index provider to really systematically capture this whole ecosystem. We have a universe of more than 3,000 companies with minimum liquidity and market cap. Then we filter down the relevant industry. Most importantly, then we have a score to really give the score of each company, their relevance and involvement into the humanoid building, and if they're a strategic supplier for a humanoid company. So that scoring system is really giving you 50 companies that are most relevant to the humanoid investment opportunity. And the index is equal weighted to maximizing the diversification as this opportunity is still very early, as Brendan said. The index is rebalanced quarterly to reflect the latest development, the dynamics of the humanoid. As the opportunity evolved in the future, the value could migrate from the body to more intelligence, to more commercialization application side. So the index gonna reflect those migration along the time. So here's the full holding of the KOID ETF. You can see these opportunities really across the body. A lot of mechanical system companies, actuation system companies, sensors, and of course critical materials. Actually, one of the CEO mentioned in the earning calls, the demand for magnet rare earth is 4 times higher for humanoid compared to electric vehicle. Actually, MP Material, one of the leading rare earth provider in the United States, enter strategic partnership with DoD, the Defense Department, really to creating like we need to create a safety for the rare earth access for the humanoid industry going forward, actually in the United States. And we also have the brain companies where company providing the platforms and the semiconductors for the humanoid models and signals, all these intelligence going forward. And we have few integrators nowadays. I'm sure with more IPOs coming, there will be more and more integrators going forward. Really, with about 38% allocation to United States, 30% allocation to China, 12% to Japan, 5% to German, with diversified sector exposure to technology, industrial, consumer discretionary, and materials. So with that, that's KOID. We list on NASDAQ. And for more information about KOID, you can check KraneShares.com/KOID. So with that, I'm gonna hand over to Brendan and Teddy. We're gonna do a demo of the real humanoid where we are in this humanoid factory with RoboStore. Now, Brendan, hand it to you.
Yeah, Teddy, thanks again for the opportunity for allow us to really bring what you're doing on a daily basis to our investor base. And I know you've got a number of quadriceps behind us, but a few. What are we? What are these guys?
Yeah, of course. So thanks for having me. And we love KraneShares working with you guys now. We did the awesome NASDAQ launch with the humanoid, and you got to see a little bit of action there, but that's just like touching the surface of where we're going. So we are on a partnership with Unitree. So Unitree is just growing, I mean, by the day in China, and they're at the forefront of really getting these robots out there for research and development purposes. So most of our clients are looking to develop on these products and basically push the boundaries of what the humanoids and quadrupeds can do. And those are really like the 2 basics of robotics right now, where we have the humanoid platform we launched. Really did a hard launch in January when we worked with Unitree at CES, and it just like the demand went crazy for universities to start getting their hands on the humanoids. Prior to that, the quadruped was the basic of the educational model for robotics. And as you'll see behind me, some of the quadrupeds we have, there's a first generation Go 1 and then a Go 2. So the Go 1 was the first like consumable model where universities were able to buy them, get their hands on them. And it's really just like, it's getting to a research and development place where people are playing with them. And it's just like computers where we had to get them in the hands of people who wanted to elevate on the product. Yeah. And when we talk about robotics now, we're in a stage where we need to just get these robots in more hands of developers and universities who are willing to like push the boundary to see what we can do. And it's amazing, but even from the humanoids that we have here, the G1s, these are like the most popular humanoid in the public right now. You can go on our website and buy them, or universities come in, they spec them out to certain hands and certain products that they want accompanied with the humanoid. But right now, we are moving so quick where the humanoid wasn't even walking properly. I called it the robot walk a couple months ago, and then Unitree pushed an update, and now it walks like a human. So we're pushing boundaries every day on where this is going.
It's almost like you read about kind of like Tesla with the EVs where they push these software updates. Is it really that from a technology, the AI element of it? Is it that's what's kind of accelerating this forward, or is it more the what's been accomplished from an industrial manufacturing, like what these things can do from a physical? To me, that's almost like you have the robotic side, and then the AI side, the technology side. That convergence to me is what is so exciting. But what's kind of your take on it? Is it what that's kind of driving this kind of leapfrogging forward?
So Tesla's a great example of hardware was there, but we didn't have the software and the carry out to really deploy like autonomous driving, right? So when the Teslas came out, everyone talked about they're going to be able to drive themselves, and then it took a couple of years to really get there, and the autopilot built, and every day, I mean, people get into their Teslas and they're like, wait, my car is better. That's the same concept right now with like the G1. So the G1 has a LiDAR on it and also a depth sensor from Intel, and the fact is, the hardware is well beyond where the software is and the current updates that are available.
Okay.
And every day that we get more data and Unitree pushes the boundary of what's been going on with the G1, we're able to now push the updates to consumers to have that hardware be basically more up to par with the software.
Okay. Well, I know we were going to maybe bring out one of bring out a G1.
Yeah, so we're going to have one walk out right now.
And how, I mean, from when, I mean, it would be interesting, like, how did you get involved? I mean, I always like to ask people, like, who are you, where'd you come from? But how did you gravitate into this space? And you're the founder, but also the chief executive officer of RoboStore. But how did you kind of get into this business?
Yeah, of course. So I actually had a friend come to me, and he was developing curriculums for a DJI Telos. DJI is a very prominent company with drones. And he said, look, there's this robotic company that's emerging in China, and I think we really got to get a hold of them and see if we can start developing on, at the time, the Go1, which is behind me. And I had put up some money for the investment and said, let's get them in and start developing on them. We had bought 50 robots and another 50 and another 50, and they kept selling to universities. And we started developing the curriculums and really just like pushing the program boundaries of the Go1. And this year, with the launch of the Humanoid, it became something that was just like a side project for us. And then now we're going all in. And as you can see, we're trying to push not only our own educational services for robotics, but now we're also doing software development, and we become the largest supplier in North America for Unitree. And we've just been trying to build the fact of getting these to more people.
Yeah.
So it's really a blend between educating, and as these updates come out, we have to keep up with them. So it's very difficult because as the AI learns more from a machine learning perspective, and also as we're getting updates pushed, everything's changing every day. So we're learning more about these things and the capabilities. So that's how I got into it, and that's kind of like our push forward.
Yeah. And from a hardware perspective, how have you seen, so just the physical embodiment of this, what have been the kind of the major changes that you've seen over the last few years in terms of what it's actually capable to do, just from the advancements, just from the actuators, the joints, what's kind of what's kind of enabled this to evolve where it's able to kind of walk and move just like a human?
Well, one of the things too is like we are learning about these machines every day. So even the first 2,000 units that were pushed out from Unitree, we made upgrades to those units. The motors have been strengthened, and there's little parts that we're just learning from just these things being used at a higher level than just the R&D basis and go into the product launch. So one of the problems is, we're learning about what are the issues and what do we have to fix and improve, and what does Unitree have to improve on the products every day. So it's been a curve every day of, hey, more people want these things, more people want to develop on them, but at the same time, we're trying to figure out, hey, what can we do to improve the motors and the actuators and everything that go into the humanoid and the quadrupeds, and just the robotics as a whole. And I always like to tell people, like right now we're in a phase where a lot of the software the hardware involved in coding the robot. So there's an NVIDIA Orion, which is basically a mini supercomputer inside the G1 EDUs. These are something you could buy off the shelf. And it's just like when we look at our more advanced units, like a B2, which is a more industrial quadruped, I mean, that's powered by a Intel i7, right? So these are like out of the box computers that you can go buy. And the fact is, the hardware, like the motors and putting everything together and having the board connect to the computer, that's the difficult part in robotics.
Okay.
The coding part, a lot of people use simulators, and you've heard Tesla talk about, they've run their simulations so many times, they know the robot works. It's conjoining those hardware pieces together, having the board actually communicate with now operating a humanoid like a human, right?
Yeah.
And, hardware's there. And the hardware's been there for a while, and it's the tweaks of where you put like the thresholds of this motor needs a little more power, and the capabilities are there. It's keeping up with everything. So I keep reiterating about that, but that's something interesting for, I guess, people to know of, like, go back to the computer age, and computers were a lot further than what people were doing on them, and then Microsoft Word came out and all these programs. So we're trying to see how the evolution works.
Yeah. And in terms of like obviously there's a lot going on with this Unitree G1. Is Unitree, are they manufacturing all of the parts themselves, or do they have their own ecosystem? We met recently with Adam Jonas, who works over at Morgan Stanley. He's their industrial analyst, who's industrial and auto. He's really gravitated to this space. He's a very early pioneer. He talked about how some of the companies that he covers, they've not connected the dots on the stuff that they're building and how it can go into a robot. And I'm just kind of curious, from a Unitree, are they doing this all themselves, or are they leveraging their own kind of input ecosystem?
So besides some of the parts that are out of the box from other companies, such as the Intel sensor, the LiDAR system, and in the education units, you get a NVIDIA computer. All the other parts are made by Unitree, and Unitree is doing an incredible job at ramping up their manufacturing. So I went to China a couple months ago, and when I was there, I mean, it was insane where they've come from in the last 3 years. They had hundreds of people working on these factory lines, doing everything from the motors to the joints, and every part of the robot I can see being made right in front of me. And the expansion that they've had from a manufacturing, then going back to QC, we've even seen that improve in the last couple of weeks. So they're not only are they making everything, but they're getting better at manufacturing at speed. So right now, Unitree is making about 200 robots a day. And let me tell you, there's been a backlog of robots for months. So as we get stock, we're basically selling as fast as we can get it. So it just shows from a year ago, they were making a couple dozen a day. Now it's hundreds of units a day, and they're being sold domestically in China.
And I mean, that's interesting that they're even the battery. I mean, so okay, that's interesting, because I would think you've got CATL and BYD, very big players in terms of obviously BYD is known for their electric vehicles, but also hybrid. But their battery technology is very, very strong. And then you got CATL, which has become kind of the global leader on battery, but they're actually building their own batteries.
So the lithium cells, I believe, are sourced from somewhere else, but they're assembling everything. I see the batteries and everything being assembled at Unitree. And also, the batteries are actually jumped like to incredible heights in the last couple of years. Like, you're seeing 2 hours of use out of this humanoid. There's a lot going on here and a lot of heat. And it's pretty amazing that this could last for 2 hours. And then moving to like a B2. So we were just playing with some B2 batteries the other day as a customer wanted them. They're 36 pounds of battery on a quadruped, and they're lasting for up to 8 hours on a quadruped that has motors that are extremely powerful.
Well, I'm shocked at how heavy this thing. I mean, you said this is about 80 pounds.
That's about 80 pounds. Shipped, you're about 90 pounds. I mean, weighs as much as a human.
About you need a real battery to move this thing.
I mean, a lot of the chunk of the weight in the stomach is the battery. So as it goes to the side, pretty much the whole chest is the battery.
And you mentioned that a lot of universities. I mean, who are your current clients today? And then how do you see that evolving? Just very recently, UBS's institutional research, they said that they think it's 2 million humanoid robots by 2035, going to 300 million by 2050. Morgan Stanley puts it at 63 million 2050. I know Jensen Huang of NVIDIA, he says 1 billion by 2035. So you've had this big range out there, but who's using it today? And then how do you see that evolving?
So most of the universities we sell to, you're talking about a ton of state schools and private universities.
Okay.
I mean, we've sold to, I can give you a list of hundreds of names of universities, but every K through 12 school is now trying to get their hands on robots as well. And some of the companies we work with companies like Nissan and OpenAI, and they've come to us to try to source the robots. And they're all trying to get into the idea of, hey, how do we start developing? And the Unitree G1 and the products that Unitree makes are incredible for R&D purposes. So, as we talk about like industrial use cases and moving forward, like these robots are really made for the educational purpose right now.
Okay.
And where the real step up is figuring out like how we take what we're learning with the robot and the basic actions and how do we put that into real world scenarios. So there has to be that phase of testing that's done from a lot of smaller companies to figure out what are real use cases. Like 2 years ago when we were selling just the quadrupeds, I remember talking to a friend and he's like, what do these things do? And I'm trying to explain it to him and I go, look, these are a great learning tool. You're coding with Python and ROS, and you're basically taking these language models for robotics and you actually have a place to deploy them now.
Right.
So a lot of schools have been teaching robotics forever, but they haven't really had a unit to deploy the robot language models on.
And have you started to see industrial applications coming into play? I mean, to me, like the quadriceps, it's so logical for security. You've got a big space. You could put someone in a golf cart and have them drive around all night. Where the quadruped, but on the humanoid robot, are you starting to see a movement into more industrial uses? I know, the Morgan Stanley and UBS teams their research folks really geared to industries like oil and gas, mining, obviously the service sector. Automotive companies seem to be kind of gravitating toward the robotic space. Not just obviously Tesla, but there's a few others. But have you started to see a more of a commercialization? The clients of RoboStore, are they becoming more? You're seeing kind of green shoots on that industrialization?
Yeah, so a little bit about that. Like if we're looking at the market as a whole and taking out like RoboStore and Unitree, I think there's a lot of companies right now like Boston Dynamics, Figure, and they're doing incredible jobs of building a robot that's going to be meant for tasks for automation and manufacturing industrial.
Okay.
And where Unitree and RoboStore, where we kind of fit in the picture is we talk about the education side, but we have so many customers that reach out every day of saying like, hey, can I have this robot full close? Can I have it do this basic task? And the answer to all these questions is, yeah, you could do it, but remember, this is basically something that's meant to be programmed to learn how to do it. We're not at the point right now where you talk to this robot and have an AI language model and say, hey, start folding these clothes. Like all these things have to be programmed to do a certain task, right? So we get a ton of people who are now building businesses on top of the Unitree products, and that's the beauty of them, right? So we talked about earlier the B2, which is the really heavy duty industrial quadruped. And I feel like the Unitree B2 is probably the best on the market when it comes to durability, and it's a workhorse and it's this incredible product. And the problem is we just don't have enough people yet who have bought the B2 and then developed the software to then do these jobs. So it's totally capable of doing it. You can put an arm on the back and start picking up things. And in September, we're actually going to start launching a B2 Fire, which is incredible for firefighting. It's basically a robot that's able to start fighting fires and hook up a hose to it, and we're able to remove individuals from that danger, right? So there's more use cases coming out, and there's a lot of companies that are curating more to the industrial use case, and that's where like Unitree fits in, is like that R&D product that we require in order to get to the next stage and really build upon the robotic revolution.
Yeah.
And we talk about how fast this stuff moves. I mean, from January to now, literally just 6 months later, I mean, we've seen like incredible programming from watching our customers on LinkedIn, what they've sent us, and then people around the globe of what they've been able to start to do with the G1.
Yeah.
And then you remember our partners from the NASDAQ, OpenMind.
Yes.
So OpenMind have started to work on basically a robot addition to the G1 that's basically a backpack. Now you can have a full conversation with the G1. And they call it Iris, or it's OM1, and it's an operating system that's built on a Mac Mini on the back of one of these G1s. And what it's doing is it's basically ChatGPT built into the robot. For layman's terms, it's not exactly, but it's able to have a conversation to now start linking the robot movements with a human-like personality to start to get tasks and information and have this other person next to you.
Right.
So like we're moving every day on this.
Yeah, I mean, should I be? I always feel like I need to like curb my enthusiasm where, you have this industrial manufacturing know-how in China, and then really combining a lot of U.S. technology in terms of that AI, and that's where I just feel like we're on this precipice that is almost like Moore's law, that this can accelerate, kind of exponentially in a very short time period. I mean, is that U.S. tech, and then you spoke to OpenMind. I mean, so this is how is their technology? You mentioned but it's all U.S. driven tech. Is that accurate?
Yeah, and a lot of these universities are developing on the G1. It might be a hardware piece that's developed in China, but you have to remember, like the computer that you're developing is on, it's an NVIDIA computer. It's the same thing that's in 90% of a Windows-based computer, or we're used to these things. It's really just like how fast the software developers can keep pushing.
Okay.
And what's the speed of getting more humanoids into the hands of people who are capable? And one of the big issues right now is, the price of these products is relatively high, right? So you're talking about a G1 Basic starting around $21,000. And over in China, because the tariff situation or anything, they're a little cheaper. But in the United States, you're talking about something that's $20,000 plus. And when you get to the programmable models, you're talking about $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. Then we're talking about hands and all the different accessories that give it that human-like function. We start talking about something that can cost you $100,000. Right. So there's a little bit of a barrier to entry to a lot of the people that can start pushing the boundaries. And what are the thresholds for universities and other companies' budgets to start pushing the humanoid boundary?
Okay.
So I think in the next couple of years or even months, you might see the prices start to come down for different type of humanoids for that same R&D purpose. And then we're just going to see exponential growth of that rolling ball of everything starts moving at a master pace. Look at AI, right?
Yeah.
ChatGPT came out, a couple of years ago, and look at the pace of now we rely on AI every day. And that's 3 years ago, we really got the global entry to a learning model for AI.
Yeah. And that's where I think how far away are we from it where you have a bunch, 10 G1s, you give them a task, and those 10 are, basically learning best practices from one another, based on, the incorporation of AI.
So that's a great question. That brings me to my next side of like, how do we push these things? So AI, there's ways to have the robot learn on AI. And there was some people have seen the video of the robots playing soccer, right? So if you listen to how they actually get to the robots playing soccer, is they gave a task to the robot is ball in the goal. And with the ball in the goal as the objective, the learning of how to get the ball in the goal basically created a soccer match between the robots, right? So we might be days or weeks out from this kind of evolution, or we might be years to a full rollout. Companies like Figure, they're doing incredible things where they're deciding to take this robot and say, we are going to master a full task. And they might be, a lot of it's secretive, but they're days or weeks or months out. And you can't really predict, how fast it's going to push. It just takes that one person to say, look at this, it's working. and then everyone kind of hops on the train of
Right.
like, let's catch up and let's get our humanoid or robotics community to start to push the same function out.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, I know, at the NASDAQ exchange, one of our longtime friends, Chris, he flew up from Florida because he was so excited. So he in hearing that we were going to meet, he was curious from your perspective, what's been the biggest hurdle from a technological perspective that's been overcome in the last few years, and then what's the next technological hurdle? I assume it's kind of on the AI side.
Well, I think it's something that people don't really talk about, but if you look at like autonomous cars, one of the hurdles was Tesla's use vision to look for everything in the road. And they use vision for depth sensing, they use vision for everything.
Yeah.
So if you look at autonomous cars, if you've been to like Arizona, California, they have like the autonomous Volvos running around and the Jaguars, right? And they have these LiDAR systems on top.
Yes.
And the LiDAR systems almost look like an old school police light.
Yeah.
And the LiDAR is built into all these G1s. They're right under the head. And if you look at like the Go 2 above me, that has a LiDAR as well. It has LiDAR in its mouth to do sensing, and then on top of it for mapping. And one of the things that we're trying to get to the next level on is that blend between vision and the LiDAR usage. So the spatial recognition, the navigation of giving the presence, like when you're a human, you could just say in your head, like, that's about 10 feet in front of me. Right. And this robot knows exactly how far something is in front of it. But now matching the distance and depth with vision to recognize, hey, how are you? I met you before. And using that to basically overcome the memory, that's a lot of stuff going on.
Yes.
And with the G1s, there actually isn't a camera looking forward. So you have a LiDAR sensor on these, and then on the top of the head, there's a depth camera, which is basically a glorified webcam, and that's looking down. And what that's done is that's actually stopped a lot of development, because now where's the facial recognition? Where's the human-like side of it?
Right.
So we've actually added on cameras to the top, and for the NASDAQ launch, we put a camera on top of the robot because we were doing teleoperation. So the hands and everything of the robot were being used by someone that was in the back of the studio. We had some difficulties with like the Wi-Fi and everything because of the studio, but that camera was actually able to now make recognition to faces. And that's like the next step of how do we take all that data, how do we combine it together to have it work properly?
Yeah. I was surprised that if you give it a nudge, that it's able to kind of rebalance itself.
Well, that's like human, right? Like, if you're developing these robots to start to do human tasks, they got to start behaving like humans. So yeah, if you push around like a G1, right, it's going to basically move itself to counter your push. And that goes back to what's kind of a barrier right now is figuring out, like, how do we get all that sensor data, and how do we get the data from the pressure points, the tactile sensors on the hands, and how do we get them all to work together?
Yeah. And then, years ago, I read this book about the history of energy usage, and they talked about the part of what allowed the transition to electricity from candle power was that just candlesticks were hollow, and it just allowed the wire to you could just stream the wire through it. And I think you think about, because the humanoid robot looks like a human, there's all these tasks that it naturally is going to fill. There's demographic issues globally, and particularly in the developed world, particularly in the urbanized world. There's also labor shortages. There's jobs that people simply don't want to do. And then there's obviously kind of wage pressures, that there's, jobs that, and when you think about where we could be, if it's, a year, 3 year, 5 year, 10, what are there industries that you think are most naturally that you'll see this humanoid robotic adoption? And and then I think it's, part of that, the hard part, obviously, to the questions is the advancement on the technology side.
Yeah, so we battled that point of like using the robot as this great tool that, let's call it like a glorified RC car, right? It's got these capabilities of doing human-like function without the danger of a human, the fatigue of a human. Now we have another side that's the autonomous side.
Right.
So when we go back and forth of like, what can we start doing with robots? Well, we have to go to more of the RC side, where it takes a human function to tell it what to do or move around a joystick or something, but now taking out danger out of a lot of jobs.
Right.
So we were talking about that B2 Fire that we're launching. That's still going to require someone to sit there on a joystick and move around the robot. But now we're taking out risking someone's life, right? So these high-risk jobs are something that's number one. And then two is we talk about teleoperation. So teleoperation is something that you've seen, like Google Robotics. They even have a kit now where you're using these manipulators that are basically hands attached to your hands to move around robotic hands. And that's something really interesting with the humanoid, because you can now combine what you want to do with the fact of a humanoid doing it. So think about how that could revolutionize workforces.
Yeah.
If we get it down so pat, you could have someone in California in the warehouse right now lifting up boxes with a humanoid. And Unitree has another product called the H1, and there's an upgrade to that, the Dash 2 or the S, and that's going to be a humanoid that's around 5'10", and it can actually lift up around 50 pounds.
Wow.
So now think about teleoperation with the power of these humanoids that are advancing. I could have 5 workers in, let's just say California, start managing a warehouse in New York.
Yeah.
And that's incredible, right? So if they're sitting there with some joysticks and an Apple Vision Pro goggle, they can actually start moving around the hands and really start to, perform work in a totally different state, a different country. Now this totally diversifies a workforce.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all seen these videos of, John Deere, Caterpillar, where someone is, it's driving it, someone's controlling it, there's no one in it, but it makes so much sense to put a humanoid robot in that driver's seat. So if there's a rock in front of it or something, get it to hop out of the cab and move it. Yeah, I know. We're kind of at a quarter till, so I want to open things up to the audience. I don't want to hog you, Teddy.
No.
You could, but Derek, any good questions or?
You have to go through some like a
Okay.
you have any, let's see, if you have any question, please send to info@KraneShares.com, or if you join via the Zoom, please feel free to type in your question here. Yeah, sorry, I was muting myself actually. Yeah, if you want to send your question, please send to info@KraneShares.com, or if you want to put in your question in the Zoom, please feel free to do so. So here we have a lot of questions actually. Yeah, so first questions like, what are your thoughts specifically on harmonic drive system? What is their mode? Other than currently they own the niche market, has the company said anything forward-looking on humanoids? Thanks. So harmonic drive system is, I think, the leading company providing the harmonic drive reducers, followed by the Chinese company Leader Drive. I think those two companies take most of the market share globally now. Harmonic drive is really, I think, is very critical for very high precision task, especially for a humanoid. I think that's something really hard to replace. And I think company already give some like comments on they already have some protocols with human companies, and the company projecting if this humanoid trend continue, that humanoid related revenue could be half of their revenue going forward for this new revenue space. Yeah, so definitely is one of the holdings in the KOID ETF, and we think many other critical parts, components represent the opportunity for humanoid. Harmonic drive system is a critical holding in the KOID. Then the next question, besides NVIDIA, which semiconductor company was needed for humanoid? Well, in our portfolio, we have more than NVIDIA in our brain, in our intelligence section. We have some analog chip companies, and we have a lot of actually technology company providing autonomous solutions. Apparently, we need a lot more autonomous solution, more than just electric vehicles, but all kinds of machines, especially humanoid going forward. So we think a broad access to those intelligence technology and semiconductor companies are critical. for the humanoid opportunity.
Besides NVIDIA, are there other players in the space? And in China, are they still using mainly lower end NVIDIA, Qualcomm chips that are not on any sort of restrictions, or are some of the China players gravitating for the robots being used in China? Are they using some of the more local players, do you think, Teddy?
I see NVIDIA as like the main player for the actual computer that's inside. And then I know we're coming out with a Qualcomm version that may be a next version for the computer inside. So I think as we evolve, it will be like AMD and NVIDIA. Like we almost like have the graphics units and computers like interchangeable, right? And it's just like it's basically your preference. So I think humanoids are the same ability to do that. They're really just computers, right? So we're going to see like those same players involved, and I think that's going to bring the enterprise value for a lot of these guys like NVIDIA and Intel, just like they have another sector to jump into.
I actually think, was thinking that, obviously NVIDIA hitting 4 trillion in market cap.
Right.
I mean, it's the revenue growth just over the last 4 years is incredible. But I actually think that potentially the humanoid robotics is going to be their bigger growth driver. That the AI, I just feel like, yeah, sure, we can search for, instead of using Google, we're going to use AI. Yes, instead of writing an answer to something, I can, have the AI look at our website and aggregate my previous thoughts into something coherent. And but I really think the robotics is potentially an underestimated element of the NVIDIA and semi story in general.
100%. And I think when we talk about like a robot that's a humanoid versus a robot that might be just a mechanical arm, they still require like sensors, they still require the same computing power. So like going back to like, even if you remember like when Bitcoin mining really took place, NVIDIA had a ton of GPUs that were being sold for crypto mining, right? And people didn't understand how many were actually being used. Well, look at like humanoids and robotics are kind of a repeat of that, because now we're taking a lot of the same chip base, the same computers that are inside, and we're putting them into all different types of robots, from arms to humanoids to quadrupeds. There's like a variety.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of that demand is going to be, kind of jumping up again.
Yeah. So next question, I think Teddy, you probably already addressed a little bit here. Why human shape, right? So why we need like we need a face, we need like arms, we need like legs, like why human shape makes sense?
Super easy. The whole world's made for humans. And I think the quadrupeds might be a better robot to start doing stuff. They carry more weight. They have 4 limbs, so they're more stable. But the whole world's developed for humans, and we're not going to go and start redoing infrastructure. And I think it's just the whole reason why humanoids are, the next evolution of robotics. And I think it's as simple as that.
Yeah, Derek. Also, that idea, that movement from candle power to electricity, just the fact that these candlesticks were hollow allowed you to put the wire through. So the whole world was ready for it, and
the thread's already there.
Yeah, exactly. It's that I think the humanoid aspect of the versus the robotic is the key there.
Yeah. So next question, how critical are rare earth materials like MP to the future of humanoid? Apparently, we have a news this morning, right? Like when MP material have a strategic partnership with the Defense Department. Brendan, you have any thoughts on the rare earth space, like where that play a role in humanoid?
Yeah. It's the rare earths. I'd say they're called kind of dual purpose. So we're using rare earths on for things like electric vehicle and robotics. There is military defense purposes for these rare earths. A lot of the high-end fighter jets, missiles require, and so I think this move today with the Department of Defense was just simply to ensure that the U.S. military has that necessary supply. There's nothing really that rare about rare earths. Is almost the irony. It's simply the processing. There's such a terrible environmental consequence for processing these rare earths, and historically, really, emerging market countries have been the only ones really willing to deal with that environmental consequence. Certainly, I think you'll see development of these processing centers for rare earths in very remote parts of the United States, simply for for the U.S. Defense Department to ensure that they have that. And I think that makes sense. I think that's something that you'll see not just from China, but a whole host of countries will recognize. Unfortunately, that was one of the lessons from COVID is supply chains are critical, and things that have that very high level of where real necessities, you're going to want to migrate some of that. I think that's some of the chatter you hear around with pharmaceuticals and potential tariffs. That some of the things that hospitals are solely dependent upon, it probably makes sense to make them not just here in the U.S. but Europe, Asia, etc.
Thank you, Brendan. Next question, I think, is really, I think what Teddy already mentioned, like we're using like NVIDIA chips here, O-ring, right? Like, so like, I think that's not really sanctioned, right, by the US government to China. So that's not really a problem, but like then some questions really, how do Unitree get those like semiconductors? So I think, yes.
I think I think big picture, business people get along great with one another, and you mentioned your trip to China, and certainly, I've been traveling extensively this year, and I think this ability to get on airplanes and communicate and have dinner and lunch with people, you can solve a lot of issues, and I think that broader U.S.-China relationship suffered because of COVID, that inability to do so. So that's something that we hope that certainly from the U.S. and China, big picture.
Itself. Yeah, I mean, we get that question a lot, and I think Derek, like going back to the question quickly, is maybe they mean like sort of the relationship of we have a bunch of product that's in these robots that's not directly developed in China, right? So we talked about like the NVIDIA Orient just being like the computer that's being programmed on these robots. That's like a huge misconception of, hey, are these robots going to start having a back door to them? And, are they going to start, getting up and someone else in China can basically, man this product? I think that's way more sci-fi than people think, right? And I think the whole idea of the relationship, and this year especially, because we've been hearing about tariffs, and this trade deal, and it's convoluted a lot of like the relationship between our current manufacturing practices for computers and how we rely heavily on Asia right now on everything in this room. Like we have tons of computers and cameras. These are all being, built through an Asian supply chain somehow, right? And at the same time, they're relying on U.S. development to sort of get everything working. So we are working together, and there's not something like some black box, in robotics that no one knows about, that's from some company that no one's heard of, that's only built in China. Like we work really well together. Yeah. And as companies mature and we are okay with the idea of there's this collaboration of global trade, we sort of lose that stigma to the brand. And Unitree is a new brand, and even companies like Boss Dynamics figure they're using products from NVIDIA, they're using products from Intel, and those are just brands that we're so familiar with and we trust, right? Yeah. So we're developing with the same brands that we already trust, and as we start to make those connections and correlations, people will be more okay with having that intermingled relationship. And I think as the trade deals start to take place and we see that there is like, we do depend heavily on each other, the relationship is much better than what's been spread in the news. We're going to be able to cultivate that to the public easier.
I mean, I think this morning, there was CNBC was talking about, should Tim Cook step down? And one of the reasons was that the failure to move to electric vehicle. But if you think about this is there's no greater demonstration of the law of comparative advantage, and this, right, where this and this hardware all manufactured in China, leveraging extensive expertise in manufacturing, right? Developed over decades, and yet the intellectual capital, the brains of this, the design, all the brain of that, the NVIDIA chips, all US. So I just think this is where it's just this marriage of what are the strengths in China and what are the strengths in the US, and guess what? We all benefit from it. I mean,
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, 2-second story, but I have another company that manufactures helmets, and we brought it to a bunch of manufacturers in the US, and they said, look, they do a really good job at making this product. And it's hard to, bring that to the US, but the development of it, we developed that in the United States, right? We had developers that we worked with and product developers who were able to cultivate that product the right way. And it's just like that relationship works really well. And I think it'll be mended once we start to have the trade deals and everything move through. And questions like Derek's, like really, like what are we relying on? Are we afraid that there's going to be a ban on these type of products? I think these are going to all sort of solve itself.
Yeah, I think growing up, I'm a little bit older, but growing up in the 80s, there was this country that they were infringing on American and manufacturing, and they were buying prized properties in the US. And Tom Clancy wrote a book about this surprise attack, and Michael Crichton wrote a book. And lo and behold, the U.S. and Japan, we get along just great, and I'm really optimistic that the U.S. and China can have a similar symbiotic relationship. Maybe I'm a little idealistic, but I think business people like yourself, Teddy, and maybe us at KraneShares, we're doing our part to try to build those bridges and leverage those relationships that hopefully flow upward to some of the diplomats.
Absolutely.
No, Derek, we're right at the top of that. Is there one question that you see jumps out to you, and then we'll let Teddy and the RoboTree, RoboStore team get back to their day.
I think like final question is like something like, can you just make the robot move and show some like cool stuff, and maybe how do people really find out more about RoboStore?
Yeah, so you can visit our website on our product pages. We have a little form on the bottom. And feel free to just reach out and ask us any questions. Email is sales@robostore.com. It's just our general info email. So reach out to us. One of us will give you an overview of what these things are capable of. More than happy to set up phone calls. And then actually right now, is this on a newer update or is this an older one? So this is sort of that robotic movement that I talked about. That's like this was the Gen 1 of how this robot moves. Now, this one's not updated. This one was sitting around, but if we update this robot, here you go. Now look at the movement of the robot now, much more human-like. That was by a flick of a switch of just pushing an update to the robot. Wow. So look how we just changed movement in 2 seconds.
That's great.
So that's how fast these things are moving.
That's awesome.
So we just saw that like stumble robot, slow move, and now we're watching it walk much like a human. It's using its arms to balance itself. So pretty cool.
Very. All right, Teddy, thank you so much. And thank you for the RoboStore and robostore.com. And certainly for follow-ups, if you'd like to receive the presentation, please email us at info@KraneShares.com. For continuing education credits, please email CE@KraneShares. That's Charlie Edward @KraneShares.com. And to my robot friend, I'd like to shake his hand and thank you for his participation during this. So thank you.
Awesome.
Give a little thank you. All right. Thanks again, Teddy.